Purpose. The purpose of the petty cash management procedure is to establish the steps to be followed to support the proper use and administration of petty cash funds, and thereby mitigate the risks associated with the management of petty cash. Scope. This standard operating procedure defines the procedures including the responsibilities, internal controls, and authorizations for receiving, expensing, replenishing, and reconciling petty cash for the UAE operations of ARENA Middle East and Asia. Applicability. The procedures defined in this document applies to all employees of ARENA Middle East and Asia, including contract personnel and part-time staff who will be responsible for the administration of and accounting for petty cash. Glossary of terms. Petty cash custodian is a member of staff who has been authorized by the relevant manager to manage the petty cash account for a particular department or project. Procedure. The petty cash management procedure includes the 4 key activities as illustrated in the figure given below. Each of these key activities are described in detail in the following pages. Establish petty cash account. Petty cash imprests are provided to departments and projects for making small payments for goods or services, where it would be uneconomic or not acceptable to process these through the accounts payable system and all other methods of payment provided by ARENA. Applications to open or vary the amount of the imprest should be made in writing through a petty cash fund request form to the finance manager and should be authorized by the head of department, projects director, or head of production and the regional CO. Departments and projects should evaluate their business requirements and limit the petty cash account to the lowest amount that will meet those requirements. Unless otherwise agreed, for projects a maximum petty cash of 10,000 ringgit, real or dirham, and for non-projects a maximum of 5,000 ringgit, real or dirham is allowed. However, this does not guarantee an automatic establishment of petty cash account, nor at such maximum level, if there are alternative ways to pay small expenses without using cash. The optimal level of petty cash must be determined by the project or department manager based on the assessment of the requirements at the project office or department, taking into the following considerations: project or department cash requirements, staff capacity, internal controls regarding separation of duties and security risks. Petty cash funds are allocated to an approved custodian who documents expenditures, keeps receipts, and safeguards the funds. There may be only one custodian per petty cash fund. Petty cash may be used to reimburse authorized expenditures up to 1,000 ringgit, real or dirham per transaction for local retail purchases, including any minor repairs, meeting expenses, business meals, books, subscriptions, postage, or similar expenses. Petty cash may not be used for transactions over 1,000 dirham, riyals, or ringgit. For travel expenses including taxes, fuel, salik and parking, for mobile SIM cards and top-ups or recharges, for medical expenses except when it is work-related, or for purchase of medical supplies for site or office HSEQ, to make personal loans, to pay employees or non-employees compensation for services rendered, to pay moving expenses or buy hazardous materials or controlled substances, and for utilities including sewerage, electricity, and internet. Purchases exceeding 1,000 ringgit, real or dirham, must be directed to the procurement and must comply with ARENA's approved procurement and accounts payable guidelines. Proper accounting for petty cash requires that custodians make payments for authorized expenditures only, obtain receipts, and record expenditures. When a petty cash is given to another party to make a payment, the custodian is responsible for ensuring that the expense complies with approved petty cash purchase guidelines. The name of the person receiving the cash, the reason for payment, the amount paid, the date paid, the financial/project codes to be charged, the signature of the person receiving the cash. The original sales slip or other receipt must be available for all petty cash-related expenses. The custodian remains accountable for the petty cash until custody is formally transferred to another employee or until the fund is formally closed. The custodian, except during absence or vacation, may not informally transfer a fund to a new custodian without obtaining written approvals as required on the petty cash request form. During absence or vacation, a custodian may place the petty cash fund with a temporary custodian. The temporary custodian and the regular custodian must physically count the petty cash box and prepare a list of cash, receipts, and replenishment requests in process. These must total the authorized value of the petty cash fund. The temporary custodian signs a copy of the reconciliation as a receipt. This receipt is retained by the regular custodian since that individual is transferring personal responsibility for the value of the fund. When the regular custodian returns, the same procedures must be followed with the receipt retained by the temporary custodian. The finance manager is informed in case of such of transfer of custody of petty cash funds to a temporary custodian. If the original purpose of the petty cash fund should change from that which was stated on the original petty cash request form, the custodian should immediately submit a new petty cash request form to the finance manager for approval. Reconcile and replenish petty cash account. At any time, the custodian is responsible for ensuring that the sum of the cash on hand plus the total receipts and replenishment requests in process should equal the authorized amount of the petty cash fund allocated to the custodian. The petty cash replenishment request form can be used to record the reconciliation. If the fund does not balance, the finance manager should be immediately contacted for assistance. A petty cash fund must always be balanced before a request is made for replenishment. The custodian is responsible for replenishing the account when a petty cash fund runs low. Custodians must submit the completed petty cash replenishment form along with the receipts at the end of each month for replenishment. Custodians can also submit a request for replenishment when the petty cash level is at or below 20% of the petty cash fund. For replenishment, the completed petty cash replenishment form along with the vouchers and receipts must be submitted to the accounts payable accountant. Petty cash replenishment requests are reviewed by the accounts payable within 2 working days of receipt and will either approve them for cash replenishment or will contact the custodian via electronic mail with questions or problems. The accounts payable forwards the approved replenishment request to the finance manager for approval and, following approval, to the treasurer accountant for issue of cash to the custodian for petty cash replenishment. When petty cash funds are replenished, the total of the replenishment form cannot exceed the full authorized balance of the fund. Review petty cash account. At the end of each financial period, each department holding a petty cash fund must re-examine whether the petty cash account is still required to meet the department's business needs, or if alternative methods of payment will suffice. Petty cash funds should be active. Petty cash funds are considered to be inactive if they have no activity during a financial year. Petty cash custodians can be contacted by the finance team any time to verify the balance held in the petty cash fund. Petty cash expenditure will be reviewed for reasonableness and appropriate use by the finance department on an annual basis, or at more frequent intervals. If it is determined that a petty cash fund is being misused or not properly accounted for, recovery actions will be initiated, and the fund will be closed. RACI Matrix. A RACI matrix is a tool that clarifies roles and responsibilities in a project by designating who is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed for each task. Please take some time to study this matrix for a clear understanding of team roles. Please review this RACI matrix carefully. Related documents and references. Here are a list of the documents referenced in this lesson.